4 words. All of the Bible hangs on 4 words. The Bible can seem to be, well, complicated. Some elements found in Scripture have been the topics of heated debates, denominational splits, and even wars. Obviously, the Bible can be complex and challenging. It can push you, stretch you, and mold you into a new man, a new woman. It is unapologetically honest, but it is doused in love. Here at Aviator, we are transitioning into a new season of ministry. As we do this, we are going to focus in on a new mission, a new vision, and a new process. That process hangs on, you guessed it, 4 words. As we come together as a church to study God's Word, we will of course deal with those topics that are tough to understand. But we will also know that the core of Scripture is a very simple command that we are to live out. It's 4 words. It's simple, it's clear, and it's what we at Aviator are about. Love God, love others.
How many of you remember that one? A handful? Yeah, that was one of the very first series we did here after I came on as the lead pastor here, is where we introduced the idea of Luglo. And if you don't know before you came in today, hopefully you know now, Luglo stands for? Wow, you guys sound really enthused about that. Love God, love others, right? Love God, love others. That's what we're here to do. I just want to be real clear about that. That's our mission, our vision, and our process. And I straight up plagiarized that from the Bible. Did you know that? Came straight from the mouth of Jesus. Like, what's the most important commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And the second one is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And we started doing that, and that was when we were talking about the mission and the vision and the process of Aviator. And today, you might have come here expecting a message on Ephesians, which is what we've been doing. And we will be back to Ephesians next week, but we're taking a quick break to do something a little bit different today, something that I feel like needs to be done. And so I'm going to give you, I've put this on social media, but in case some of you are not social media people, because I'm not either, I will say this. Next week, we will pick up in Ephesians chapter 5. We're going to talk about husbands and wives. And so I have asked people, and when I say people, let's be real about this. I have asked the ladies who will actually do this and who will remember to do this, to send to me, to my personal email account, dave@aviatorchurch.com. I want you to send me a picture of your wedding day if you're married. I want to send a picture of you guys today and to tell me how long you've been married in the email. We're going to do something fun with that next week. It'll be either fun or tragic depending on how bad your pictures change. I'm a little bit more round in my today picture than I was on our wedding picture. Kind of bums me out. But it also shows that we've been together for a long time and had a bunch of kids and life is really good. So that will be back to next week. This week, we're going to do something different. Now, I don't know if you noticed, I don't have my TV behind me. Right? Usually I bring my TV up here, but instead I call this my serious stool. And the serious stool, I bring that, just kidding. She sneezed. Anyways. The serious stool works like this. The serious stool, when I have something serious to talk about, I sit in the serious stool, and it conveys seriousness. So we'll sit in the serious stool a little bit today. But we're going to talk about a couple of things in the life of Aviator. I actually did this a couple of years ago, and I want to talk about some of the things that have happened since that time, but I actually want to start by talking about a conversation I had with my kid this week. Ordinarily, by the way, if you're brand spanking new here, if this is your first time ever, number one, my name is Dave Atherton. I'm the lead pastor. I'm so grateful that you're here. Number two, ordinarily at this church, we do expositional preaching, meaning we go straight through books of the Bible. So we are currently on our 6th book since I've been here as a pastor, going through the book of Ephesians. This is a rare message. This is different than usual. So if you're here and you're like, well, I wonder what they do when they actually look at the Bible more, come back next week. It's going to be awesome. But I want to start by talking about a conversation I had with my oldest son this week. A cool thing happened. Every so often as parents, we get these moments where it's like our kids actually like us. You know what I mean? And they don't, the older the kids get, the fewer and further between those events of time are. And my 8-year-old is my oldest kid. And he's starting to get to the point where, you know how it used to be where, mommy or daddy hung the moon and the stars and they were just so enamored with you and all this kind of stuff. Well, now my 8-year-old has figured out how to roll his eyes, right? Like a little sinner would do. He has figured out how to have attitude. He's got his own little personality. He's proving how independent he is, which is awesome. And honestly, here's the thing. It's necessary, right? It's a thing that as a dad, I want him to do. I just want him to do it less. You know what I mean? But it's necessary for him to figure out how to be his own man. And I always say this from the stage here, I talk about to the boys all the time. Am I raising boys? No, I'm raising men. And part of that means he has to become more independent and need me less and want to be with me less, because it would be really weird when he's 27 years old and getting married and all of this, if like every day he comes over to his dad's house to hang out with him and like, play in the treehouse. That would be a weird thing to do, right? And so I need him to grow up, but it's also hard to watch him grow up. But this week, a cool thing happened. He actually kind of got dragged to a wedding rehearsal. I did a wedding for a couple in the church this weekend. And so basically Friday night, the other boys had music class, and so he couldn't stay at home by himself. And so Titus got to go to Belle Plaine with me to do a wedding rehearsal, which is super exciting. If you've ever been to a wedding rehearsal, you know how just chock full of excitement those are. But we had some really good talks on the way down. Actually, he enjoyed it so much that the next day was the wedding. He's like, Dad, can I go to the wedding? I want to see what the actual wedding looks like now. And I'm like, yeah. And so we rode together and we talked and we had these conversations, and it was really cool. And somehow, I don't remember how it started, we got talking about miracles. We got talking about miracles in the car, and my son asked me this question. He says, Daddy, what's the difference between a miracle and magic? I'm like, well, let's talk about it. What do you think is the difference between a miracle and magic? And we kind of worked through it, and this is kind of what he came up to, and I think this is pretty astute for an 8-year-old. A magic trick or magic can be explained away. It can be like once you know how the trick works, like it's something that you could recreate. It's something that anybody could do. I have some card tricks that I've shown my kids, and I've taught Titus how to do the card tricks. And so now he can do the card tricks for his little brothers, right? He's like, I know how it's done. It can be explained away, but he's like, but a miracle can't be explained away. Like a miracle, people can't like recreate, like, oh yeah, I could totally like take some fish and some bread and like feed 5,000 people with that. I could absolutely do that, right? That's the thing that you just can't do. The only way that you can explain a miracle, the only explanation for something that's a miracle is God did a God thing, right? The difference is we can come up with magic tricks. We can't come up with miracles. When it comes to a miracle, we are dependent on God to do something. So we started talking about the miracles in the Bible, and the one that we got to first is one of my favorites. It was the parting of the Red Sea, which even if you've not been in church very much in your life, you know about the parting of the Red Sea because it's been in several movies, right? It's one of those miracles that's just so cool to picture, and it comes at the end of this, the Exodus process where you had the plagues and all of this stuff. But I want you to go back and I want you to think about the miracle, because when you look at a miracle in the Bible, every miracle has one moment that is my favorite moment in the miracle. Every miracle has one moment, and it's consistent in every single miracle in the Bible. One moment in this thing where like I call it the point of no return. It's where the person is pot committed. They are sold out. Whatever is going to happen, if anything is going to be something that will deliver them from this danger, if anything is going to be amazing that happens, it's going to be God. At this point, all of the power is out of the hands of the human. This is the point of no return. And in the miracle of the Red Sea, it comes after all the plagues, and after Pharaoh tells the people, just get out of here, we don't want you anymore, and they run. And then it says Pharaoh had the change of heart, and he immediately starts pursuing the people as they're leaving with the army behind them. And so these Israelite people they're running from the Egyptian army, and they run up to the Red Sea. And so you have a sea in front of you. You have an army of well-trained murderers behind you. And at that point in time, because God had commanded Moses to do so, Moses steps up to the Red Sea. And he goes like this. How confident do you think he was? 100%? 100% confident? Was he 100% positive that it was going to happen? Was he 95? Was he 12? How confident would you be? Again, I can go home today, and I promise you this, my wife is going to a baby shower or something today. I don't know, something the ladies are doing. And anyways, I'm going to have my 4 kids at home, and they're going to start yelling at each other and fighting. And today I'm going to try this. I'm going to go... How confident are you that anything impressive will happen when I do that? My kids will look at me and be confused and then continue to hit one another. That's the way that's going to go, right? Legitimately, at this point, Moses was commanded to do it. But here's the thing. Does Moses have any power in and of himself? No. Does Moses have the ability to split a sea in half? No. He puts his hands out there, and this is the point of no return. If this doesn't work, if this doesn't work, they're going to get slaughtered. I love that moment. That moment where, and sometimes you get there in your life because you choose to obey and you choose to put your faith in God, and you have this incredible moment of faith and confidence in who God is, and sometimes you just find yourself between an army and a sea. And you're like, the only way that this thing works is if God does a God thing. And Moses throws his hands out there, and by golly, the wind starts blowing, and it starts pushing that. Think about how strong the wind has to be to literally push water aside and to create two walls of water. What an amazing thing that is. It says they walked through on dry land, and then when Pharaoh's army came charging in after, mind you, God is confusing them and keeping them away with a pillar of fire. When finally Pharaoh's army runs in after them, the water crashes back in on them, wipes them out in one fell swoop. Can you imagine what it would have been like to be standing just close to Moses? Right? Because here's the thing. We know that earlier in that chapter, the Israelites, they said to Moses, Moses, why did you bring us out here to die? We were perfectly happy being slaves in Egypt. Oh, if we could just go back there, everything would be okay. I can tell you this, regardless of how confident Moses was, the people did not share that level of confidence. And so the people, they get there, and imagine the ones like Moses is there, and like Bill is standing right behind him. He's like, oh my gosh, we're going to die, right? And then Moses turns around and he throws his hands up. And Bill's like, you've got to be kidding me with this guy. Like, what is wrong with this idiot? What is wrong with this guy? Right? Legitimately, the people around had no confidence, had no belief. And Moses threw his hands up there. And I'd love to be able to interview him to know exactly what % confidence he had in that moment of what was going to happen. But here's what I know. That was the point of no return. It was the point of no return. And at that point, God did an incredible thing. And that is consistent in every miracle. David and Goliath, right? David gets the sling. He gets the thing whipping around. He's got his rock there. Now, had he trained with a slingshot? Sure. But listen, you're talking about hitting a pretty small spot, right? And legitimately, David spins that sling and shoom, right? Imagine in that moment, what would have happened if the rock would have hit the top of his helmet, like dink, and flying off, right? How does that go for David? Right? He's dead. He's gone. It's over. That when he let go of the rock, everything like Goliath is still just making fun of him or whatever. But once the rock came out and David took the offensive against Goliath, that was not going to go well for him if that didn't play out exactly like that. What about when Daniel was dropped with the den of lions? I want to make sure you understand that. He was dropped into a den filled with hungry, ravenous lions. And he drops down in there. At what point, do you think Daniel got in there and just punched the lions in the mouth and they're like, oh, he means business, we'll leave him alone? No, he gets in there and literally God shut the mouths of the lions. God did what only God could do because Daniel had no ability to do that at all. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You listen to it, you can read this one of two ways. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were told, if you don't bow down and worship the king, then we're going to throw you into this furnace. It was cranked up, crazy hot. We're going to throw you into this furnace. You're going to be burned up. You're going to be dead. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, what? Said, we're not going to do that because the God who we serve is able to save us. But even if he does not, we still will not worship the king. Woo! Even if he doesn't. We know that God can do anything. Like, these are people who understand the story of the Red Sea. They understand the stories that have gone before them, and legitimately they stand there and they say, listen, God is able to do whatever God wants to do, and if he does that, then awesome. What an amazing testimony that will be. But even if he doesn't, we will not bow down to you, O king. I love that one because you think like, oh, that shows an incredible amount of faith. Or are they hedging their bets? Right? Maybe it's that they're completely confident God's going to do a thing, or maybe they're not. Right? Maybe they're going into the furnace and they're saying like, it just doesn't matter. We have principles. We will die with our principles if we have to. We'll die with the fact that we bow our knees only to God. See, every miracle has a point of no return. And in our time here, I think Aviator has had a few points of no return, and God has been really good to Aviator. And it's been fun. And so here's what I want to do today. I want to take a second, and I want to talk through a little bit of that and talk about another moment that's coming for us that is a point of no return. Because I have my serious stool and I'm talking kind of differently than I usually do, let me just start out by saying this. The Athertons are going nowhere. Okay, so like, oh my gosh, she's getting all weirdly serious. No, we're here. We're like, listen, like we bought a house. We ain't going nowhere. You think I'm interested in moving again with 4 small children? That ain't happening. I will die in that house, right? But anyways, that's a weird thing to woo, I guess. I mean, I guess that I'm being here, or we're not leaving, but also like, this is still about me dying. Anyways. I want to talk to you about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I did a similar message to the one that I'm going to do here today. As a matter of fact, I took the exact same points from 2 years ago. We're going to do the same exact points today. 2 years ago, something happened on a Saturday afternoon. I got a call from Bev, who was our financial person at the time, and Bev called me and said, Dave, bad news. And I'm like, what's that? And she's like, the church has no money. And I was like, oh. Okay, and so we drove down here and we met with Bev and had a conversation with her. And basically what she was saying was the church has in total reserves, we have $3,000 before we're out of all of the money, which was bad. My wife and I came here, let's back up the story for just a little bit. We came here in July, and this is September, and we knew that the only way that I can explain how Lisa and I ended up at Aviator was this. We were basically like bulls. Right? Like, like bulls, like, right, bulls. We were bulls because we just kept seeing red flags and we charged, man. Like, look at Aviator. There was red flags everywhere. And we're like, okay, let's go. Here we go, right? We knew that the finances were rough. We knew that there had been some decisions that were made here before we got here that were putting the church in a difficult spot. And we understood all of that, and yet we actually at one point we had said, like, yeah, we're not going to go there. That would be crazy. That would be lunacy. And then we kept praying about it. And sometimes God does weird stuff. He calls you to do the crazy lunacy-filled thing, right? And so Lisa and I met and interviewed. They offered the job, and we sat in our living room. I think I was laying on the floor, Lisa was on the couch, and we talked probably until, 3 in the morning, going back and forth on, should we go to Aviator, should we not go to Aviator? We loved the people here. We loved the opportunity. We also looked at it and knew there were some real issues that we were going to have to overcome. And we had decided that night, we're not going to do it. We can't go to that church. We can't do that right now. We got kids, we need more certainty and this and that. We went to sleep, and then the next morning we both woke up and we're like, yeah, we need to go. It was one of those, it's God's calling us to do it. We can't let the red flags or the things that scare us away from what God has called us to do. And so we came here, and then again, 3 or 4 months later, mind you, at this point, we're still commuting from Hutchinson because we knew the finances were tight. And so we were commuting from Hutchinson because we didn't want to commit to buying a house down here in case the church went belly up. And then we were stuck with a house down here. And the house that we lived in Hutchinson, we bought kind of way down in the hood. And so it was a $50,000 house. So we could figure out how to pay a $50,000 house mortgage if we have to. That was kind of the mindset where we were at that point. And we knew that it was rough. We didn't know how bad it was until Bev called that day. And so anyways, the next day we came in here, and basically I told the church, I was like, hey guys, let me ask you this. This was 2 years ago, this week, right? How many of you were here at Aviator Church 2 years ago? Okay, how many of you were not at Aviator Church 2 years ago? A bunch of people. So 2 years ago, I got up and basically I said, hey guys, we're going to have to close the doors and board up the windows unless things change, right? We had this moment, and the church responded, and God did God things. And from that time, so that was September, last week of September 2019. So basically, we had October, November, December, January, February into 2020, where not only did we pay our bills, which was awesome, because a lot of months we struggle with that. We paid all of our bills, but we also put back $50,000 into reserves during those 5 months. It was incredible. Now, I knew that God was doing something then, but I didn't understand the degree to which God was doing something until now we have the ability to look back at that with hindsight. Because do you understand what happened in March of 2020? COVID happened in March of 2020. I am convinced of this. I am convinced that it snuck up on us and forced our hands to have that conversation because I am convinced God had a plan to get us ready to weather a storm. That, let me just be real blunt about this. Had we not had those 5 months prior to COVID, we would not be here right now. That's where it would have been. There's no way we would have survived the difficulty that COVID brought us had we had those months, and that guided us through. And here's the thing, looking back, like I didn't know the COVID storm was brewing. The Athertons had no idea what we were signing up for when we came here, and yet looking back, it is so cool to see God's hand moving in every single one of these things. Like things that we couldn't even have imagined. Like coronavirus was a different kind of animal. And God had already prepped us for it. God had already gotten us ready to survive it. God had done all of the work. And listen, just like when Moses throws his hands up over the water, we understand that Moses did nothing special there, right? We understand that. What we understand is that God had the foresight to tell him to do that before he ever got there. God understood the army was coming. God understood the problems that the Israelites were going to face, and God provided every single step of the way. And when I look back at our time at Aviator, I can say that's what God has been doing here all along. We've been living on a razor's wire, razor's edge as far as like finances and the business side of things go. And man, it's been difficult, and yet God has been so good. Thank you, the one person who said amen. God has been so good to us. It's been awesome. And so anyways, today I need to talk to you through, actually, there's one other thing. Can I tell you one other thing that was cool that happened out of that last message we did? When I did the message where I said, like, hey, we don't have any money and everything's terrible and the church is going to close, that message, right? There were 2 people who were here for the very first time that week. Did you know that? There was 2 families who were represented who were here at Aviator for the very first time. That was their first Sunday. They walked in and the pastor got up and said, we're about to close the doors if we don't figure out our money, right? One of them was Matt Atherton and his family. Matt is my brother, in case you didn't know. He was the worship pastor who was leading here. That was the first time Matt ever came to Aviator, and it got done. I remember talking to him after the service, like, well, that was interesting. I was like, yes, it was. And yet God started doing a work there on Matt as well as he was kind of weighing his options in life, and in part because I think he just felt a draw to be a part of the thing that was happening down here. Matt has been in worship ministry full-time for 20 plus years. He's real good at what he does. The last church he led worship at was a big 11 campus thing. He's done stuff like on huge stages and whatnot. And Matt says, you know, Dave, I think I want to come down and be a part of what you're doing down there. I'm like, really? Really? Hey, you're like a bull too, right? He stepped out of full-time ministry, took a job as a project manager at an architectural metal company, and came on here very, very part-time just to be a part of what we're doing. Here's the thing. I knew Matt was there that week. You know who I didn't know who was here that week? Very first time that they'd ever come to Aviator? Bryce and Nikki Dudek were here for the very first time. And so literally Nikki, who is now our children's pastor, right, was sitting there, and she had been on staff at a church before and had left because it was just kind of a toxic environment. And literally, they were like, man, I would never, literally, Nikki had said, I would never go back and work at a church again. That's what she said, right? And then she came here, and I found out later that was the first Sunday she was here, and I asked her, like, why did you come back? Right, like, if that's the first message I heard at a church, like, hey, everything's like toxic and we're going to die, right? Like, I'm like, oh, good luck to you guys. I'm going to go check out the next church or whatever, right? I was like, why did you come back? And she's like, it was just so weird to hear a pastor get up and like just say what was happening. It's like, that was such a weird thing to me. I just wanted to see what happened next. and that morphed into literally the last time that I told you we were having financial issues, we got 2 staff members out of it. And so today we're going to talk about some financial issues that we have coming up. I cannot wait to see which one of you is going to be our youth pastor. It's going to be great. So anyways, I want to kind of walk through and kind of tell you the last time we had a conversation like this, we broke this whole thing down into 2 areas. And what we said is this, that when the church, but when it comes to the church budget, it's no different than your budget. The church budget has income and it has expense. And so we're going to break things down accordingly. Now, I want to start by telling you this. We're not as bad off as we were before. Praise the Lord, right? We're not saying like, hey, we have $3,000 and if things don't change, the doors are shutting. What I can tell you is we're not in a great spot either. either. And I told you guys back when we did this the first time that we were going to have some weeks where we would do this. And I know that if I call a special business meeting, you people don't come. So we do this on Sunday mornings because I think it's important and I think you need to know. Because here's the thing. I think if you guys are going to be connected here and you're going to be tithing here, you should know how we're looking financially and you should want to know how we're looking. I was actually talking to one of the guys who is a regional director for the Southern Baptists in this part of the state. And I told him, I was like, you know what we need? We need some people who will come to like fist fights at business meetings. That's what we need in the church. We need some people who care a lot about where the money is going. We need people who are willing to say like, hey, are we being good stewards of the things? And so I want to talk through with you guys a little bit about income for the church and expense for the church. First thing when it comes to income is this. Our income comes from people giving. Look, I'm in my serious stool because I'm talking to you about tithing. And when I talk to you guys about tithing, people get angry. And so I'm sitting to be less threatening. Is it working? Legitimately, the church's income, we do not have other streams of income other than people giving. That's where our money comes from. And so with that money, we do two things. Number one is we pay for ministers. Number two is we pay for ministry. Those should be the things that we're doing. Let me tell you why we're hurting financially as much as we are in case you're new here. The building that you're sitting in is by and large the reason that we struggle a lot financially. What that means is that when this building was built, the church had grown up to being a very big church, and at that time they took out very big church debt on this building, as well as a couple other places and things that they'd done. Now, essentially, the church had a mass exodus at one point in time, long before I got here. And so when I first got here, we were somewhere around 130-ish people. We got up to around 200 pre-COVID and then kind of back down to where we were like 130 to 150. But our kids ministry, by the way, I don't know if you're aware of this, our kids ministry is banging. Everybody who's come to the church in the last year has been a family with like 14 children. It's been insane. But yeah, it's all kinds of fun. And I'll tell you this, like if you want to see chaos during the Sunday service, go back there. It is wild. Anyways, So I don't know, I threw myself off there. So as we're getting back to the idea of giving, when people come here, when people get connected, we ask that they give. The reason that we do that is because the Bible is very clear. The Bible asks that you give. We see that consistently. We see it in the book of Numbers, where it explains that there was a role for the Levites. The Levites were one of the tribes of Israel, and they were not given any land inheritance. They were given the duty of doing ministry for the people. They were the ones who were responsible for carrying out the ministry. And so what it said was that all of the other tribes who had land and who could make money and who could do all of that stuff, their job was to set aside a tenth of their earnings or of their crop or of their livestock or whatever in order to go to pay to help keep the Levites fed and to allow them to have families as well while they're doing the work of ministry. Later in Deuteronomy, we see that money is also supposed to go to the foreigners, to the indigent, to the poor. It's to help people in your community who don't have any money. And so very clearly the Old Testament sets it up where it says the reason people give is to cover the cost of ministers and ministry. Unfortunately for us, we still are also paying a huge portion of what comes in for this building. And that's unfortunate. And I can only tell you this. I'm not ripping anybody in previous leadership or anything like that. That's not the point of this. What I will say is this. I have said it here a million times, and I'll say it once more for those of you who are new. I hate debt. I hate debt. Do you guys hear people say it with me? I hate it so much that people know that I hate it, so they say it with me when I say it. I hate debt so much. I can tell you we have not gone into any more debt since I've been here. I can also tell you that when I got here, our debt load total was north of $2 million. It currently sits at 1.5 and some change. So that's awesome. We're whittling down, right? That's still a lot of debt, and it still creates a large payment. And so unfortunately, a lot of our money that should be going to ministers and ministry doesn't go to ministers or ministry. How many of you are finding this riveting and exciting? Good job, all four of you. The rest of you, I promise we'll try to get you out in time for the Chiefs game. Here we go. It's good to know that the Broncos played on Thursday. I don't have to worry about their loss. I can just know that it already happened. So anyways, when it comes to the giving, I can tell you this. Our giving has kind of had a pretty dramatic drop in the last 4 to 6 months, and that is causing us to have to go back into that reserve that we've gotten to. I can tell you that we have gone from around $50,000-ish in reserves before COVID hit. We're down to about 20 right now, and if the giving trend continues the way that it's going, we've got maybe 2.5 months before we're back into some real problems. And so I tell you that because I'm going to say something that people hate. By the way, this is the sermon, this is the thing that pastors do that turns the most people off to church across the board. What I'm going to tell you is you need to be giving if you call Aviator home. You need to. We need you to. And yes, I have a vested interest in this. Feeding my kids is dependent on people giving. I know that that's a thing, and therefore, it looks like this is a money grab, and I'm going to tell you a few things that will indicate to you exactly where the heart of the leadership of your church is, so that you know exactly what we are doing with your funding. I'm going to start with Nikki real quick. Nikki Dudek is currently working 3 jobs, in case you didn't know that. This is one of her 3 jobs. I won't say which one it is that she really, really, really wants out of, because it might be a place that you know. But I can tell you she's currently working one job that she desperately wants to not be at anymore, and yet she continues to work there so that she can also work here the minimal time and the minimal hours that we pay her, so that they can make ends meet for their family. Nikki is a hard worker who loves kids more than any. I'll tell you this, I know parents who don't love kids as much as Nikki loves the kids in our. It's crazy how much she loves her kids. And I can tell you, when my kids walk in to visit me during the week, one of the things is, I will tell them, leave Pastor Nikki alone. Right? Nikki's working, let her do her thing, you leave her alone. And they listen to me and they obey and they say, yes, Papa, I will. And then they totally leave her alone. Except that doesn't happen at all. They find her like, Nikki, rah, right? And here's the thing, no matter what Nikki is doing, you know what she does? She stops, and for as much time as is necessary, she spends time with my boys. And as a dad, as a boss, I'm like, guys, leave her alone so she can get her stuff done. As a dad, oh man, getting all teary out of her. As a dad, I love that I have a children's pastor who has that kind of a heart. I told you Matt stepped out of full-time ministry. I didn't ask if I could have his permission to share this, so deal with it. Matt stepped out of full-time ministry to work for a different company, and I can tell you this, that company is also not doing particularly well, and there have been a great many times where they have not hit payroll. And Matt is working here for part-time, and I don't know if you're aware of this. If he wanted to go get another job in ministry somewhere, it would not take him very long at all. Matter of fact, I know that there are churches who have come knocking even since he's been here. Matt is working for nothing here. I mean, very little. And when I talked to him about the financial concerns that we were having, this is what he said to me: Dave, if we need to cut my pay, just let me know. That's the heart of your staff. I'm going to tell you, and again, this is not, I don't do this. I want you to hear this so that you understand that we would never ask you to do anything that our staff would not personally do. When Liesl and I got here, we knew it was tight. We knew it was tight. And then I looked at the budget and I was like, huh, that is tighter than we expected. And so I think it was about 6 days into my time as lead pastor, Liesl and I contacted the people we needed to contact to let them know, we're not going to take the salary that you offered us. And we cut our salary fairly dramatically, to the point where between the amount that we cut off and what we continue to give on top of that, it's about 33% off of the initial starting place. And again, I say that, we're fine with that. We're fine with that. We made that decision, and here's the thing, God has blessed us the whole way through, and it's been incredible. And times where it's I literally right now I make less as a lead pastor than I made as a youth pastor, right? And yet God has been so good to us throughout this entire time. We found a house that was $50,000 under asking price, through back channels, and it's been an amazing place. And everything has worked out, and God has been so good, and God has blessed us beyond measure. But I want you to know, if it comes to it, we'll cut again if we have to. But I'm telling you this so that you understand the heart of your staff. I was driving in the car. It's 11:30. I'm really sorry. We're going to be a few minutes late. Annika, if you need to bolt, you can bolt. That doesn't matter for the rest of you. That's just, I had a conversation with her before the service. But in the car this week, I was listening to this thing where they were breaking down. Does anybody know who Kenneth Copeland is? Okay. If you listen to Kenneth Copeland on the regular, come talk to me in the lobby afterwards, so that I can encourage you to not do that anymore. But Kenneth Copeland is a guy who he's a pastor. I want to put that in air quotes, but he's somebody who is a prosperity gospel preacher. He's one of those guys who, you just send me the money and then God will bless you and everything's going to be amazing. They did this thing called a Victory Thon here recently, and the Victory Thon is kind of like, how many of you love listening to K-Love during the giving drive? One. Everyone else, I saw heads around there like, no. Like, oh, I love that giving drive, right? Oh, man, I got to tell you, good for you, because I can't stand it. It drives me bonkers crazy, right? But I understand what they're doing, and they're collecting money for ministry, so I can appreciate, and I like the ministry that Caleb does. But what I'll tell you is this, the Victory Thon is the fundraiser that they do for this church, Kenneth Copeland, and he's somebody who's like, just plant that seed, and God will bless you, and basically telling people that you'll be very rich and all this. And here's the thing, what broke my heart is I was driving in, and I was listening to somebody talking about the Victory Thon. And they played a clip from the actual thing. And there's all these people who are calling in and saying, I'm planting my seed for $1,500. I'm planting my seed for $32. I'm planting my seed, blah, blah, blah. The one that broke my heart was this. There was a woman who called in and said, I want you to know that my son is listening, and he wants to plant his seed too. He wants to plant his seed, and so he went and emptied out his piggy bank, and my 8-year-old son wants to give all of the $35 in his piggy bank to this thing. As a Christian, I was bothered by that. As a pastor, I was furious about that. And as a dad, I was ready to fight. You understand? Because here's the thing, I think that it was disingenuous what they were doing, and I think they were taking money, and I think that they live a very lavish lifestyle, and I think that eventually there will be accountability for that. What I can tell you is this, your church staff is not that. Your church staff is willing to make the cuts where we need to make the cuts. Your church staff is here. We give the same as we're asking you to give. We have slashed salaries about as far as we can slash them. I can tell you this, our heart is here. We love Derby. We are here to serve Derby. We are here to be a part of a church that impacts the community, not for our own benefit, but with the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's why we unapologetically preach through books of the Bible. It's why we approach ministry the way we do. It's why here in a little bit I'm going to ask a bunch of you to go canvass the neighborhood to get people to come out here for a trunk or treat. It's why we do all of the things we do, is because we love this town. We love this city. We have a heart for this place, and we want to be a part of serving. So we give just as well as we ask you to give. I just want that to be very clear and known up front, because I know that a lot of pastors can be pretty shady in that. That is not the heart of your staff here. Everybody understand? So that's income. I'm asking you to give. When it comes to expense, I've already told you, we have made progress in our money overall. Our debt is lower than it was, which is great. We have cut. I remember when I first got here, we had a big debate about cutting the ice machine. And I think it was like $12 a month or something like that. And we cut it, right? Like, to give you an idea of the things that we've cut, we cut the $12 a month ice machine, and it's been gone for a long time. And Dave walks up there and buys ice and brings it down here anytime we need it. That's the level to which we have cut things. Expenses don't have a lot of other things to do other than the building that we're sitting in, so I want to be upfront with you on a couple things. There has been conversations. We have a team of people who we've met with some. It's been a while since we've met, but we've had conversations about listing the building, and do we sell the building and try to move somewhere else. We had one church who contacted us, and we talked about doing a building swap for a while, because they needed a bigger place until they built somewhere else, and that ended up not working out. But I want you guys to hear this so that down the road, whenever this thing comes up, if anything does come up, you won't be shocked by it. Everything is on the table for us to get out of debt. Look at me. Everything is on the table as far as us getting out of debt. I don't think that God called us to this building. He called us to this community, right? And so if the building has to go in order for us to do ministry, bye, Felicia, as the kids say, right? The building will go. We will not stay here if it inhibits us from doing ministry in this community. So I just want you guys to know, like, there's no option that we're not looking at. There's no thing that we're not considering. Nothing is another way of saying that word. Everything is on the table, but as far as expenses go, there's not a whole lot more that we can cut than what we already have. And so basically where we're at is we need you guys to contribute. We need you to be consistent and faithful givers. And that is a dangerous thing to ask because that will run people off of a church faster than just about anything else. The biblical kind of guideline is 10%. And you may be saying like, Dave, I couldn't give 10% if my life depended on it. Then don't. Don't give 10%. Give something. Give something. Be a giver as best as you can be a giver. If your life has been spent living paycheck to paycheck, here's another thing that we do because we want it to be a service to you in this regard as well. We will be re-upping our Dave Ramsey Financial Peace curriculum. We sent, I think about 20 families all told, went all the way through it last year. It is a really simple plan. It will help you get control of your finances so that down the road you don't have to live paycheck to paycheck and that you will be able to bless others and be able to give and to be able to be generous. That's this whole thing. Get rich so that you can give it all away. That's his kind of shtick. And so we will be doing that if you find yourself in that place. We want to come alongside you. We want to bless you. We want to minister to you. We can't, listen, here's the statement of the day. We can't do that if the doors are boarded up. We can't. So I don't want to get to the place where we were the last time we had this conversation, candidly. I would like to have this conversation now, level things off, and I'd like to be able to just go back to doing ministry. I can tell you this. At the end of the message today, I'm going to ask you to do a couple things. I'd like to get back to focusing on the people across the street from us and not focusing on whether or not we're going to make bills each month, because I think that when we are focused so much on making bills, we've lost sight of the vision that God has put us here to do, which is to love God and love others. And so I want to be able to get back to focus on being able to love others, and in order to do that, we have to figure out how to be a church that consistently gives and cheerfully gives, and that then manages those gifts well in order to pay the bills. In the meantime, you can know that we are going to be doing a full business meeting December 5th. Be there, or I will bring another one of these on December 12th, right? After church on December 5th, we're going to have a business meeting. We're going to be presenting an actual budget for the first time, to my knowledge, in Aviator history. It's going to be very exciting. We're going to be doing some announcements as far as how we're looking to spend money in the upcoming year, some of the targets that we have. And here's what I need. I need you guys to be there. I need you to question why we're doing the things we're doing. I need you to be ready to have the fights, good old-fashioned Southern Baptist fight over a business meeting. You guys with me on that? A couple of you are in. I saw one very aggressive head shake. Oh, I've been waiting to fight some people for a long time. Let's go. All right? Be a part of the business of the church so that we can together accomplish the ministry of the church. Here's some things, if you want to do them now, that will be very, very helpful. Number one, if you either don't give consistently or if you don't know how to give consistently, we have an app. And I actually did this yesterday on my phone to make sure that it was super duper easy. We have an app. It is called Church Center. If you download the Church Center app, you'll have to look up Aviator on there. And on the main page right here, there's a little give tab. You can set it up to give, and then you can set up how frequently you would like that gift to be. Here's the thing. I don't know if some of you are like me. I'm super duper forgetful. And so I will just it's not like I'm trying to not do a thing. I just forget. If you've ever tried to set up a meeting with me, you already know that, don't you? Those of you who have had to do that, you know that, oh yeah, Dave, we talked about this. I'm like, we did? Neat. Can we reschedule? Because I forgot. And then I'll forget that one too, and the third time is usually where we make it happen. So anyways, the giving app, if you do it and set it to do it automatically, that is the easiest way to make sure that you don't miss it. Please do that. Number two, on that app, the second thing I want you to do is get connected into the church. We have a sign up for Connect groups. I need you to sign up for Connect groups. I need you to sign up, put in the date and time that your family is available so that you can get tied into the life of the church, the ministry of the church. It is super important that you do that. And if you can't give financially, then give of your time by getting connected into the body. Let yourself be discipled here at Aviator, and we will do ministry regardless of whether or not financially you're contributing. I will also say this. Today, you have an opportunity to get connected in service. Did you know that there are between Buckner, Meadowlark, Woodlawn, and Madison, the neighborhood that is directly closest to us, in that rectangle, did you know that there are 543 houses? 543 houses. And we have decided that we want to bless those people. And so today after church, if you're like, Dave, I don't have the money to give, but I still want to give to the church in some way, shape, or form, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We're going to meet at the circle table out in the lobby. We're going to take these here little flyers, and we're going to pass them out to, I think, about half of those houses today. So if your family can walk about a quarter mile down and back, so half mile total, come and serve and be a part of letting the people know in this community that, hey, we're putting on a thing specifically because we love you and we want to connect with you. Find ways to get involved. Find ways to get serving. Find ways to get connected. From a spiritual aspect, here's what I need you guys to do. Everybody repeat after me. Everyone say, pray. Pray. I need you to be praying. I need you to be praying that God would be blessing the work of Aviator. I need you to be praying that God would open up avenues to bless the people in the community next to us. I need you to be praying that God, just like he did before coronavirus, has a plan for the business of Aviator and has a plan to see us through. You know what I want you to pray for? Pray that God would do something crazy. Pray that God would do something Red Sea sized, that as we look at our debt and we're seeing it as this insurmountable thing, like, I don't know, maybe someone's got a rich uncle. I don't know, right? But like legitimately pray that God lines us up with somebody who's like, I would love to pay that off for you. That would be a crazy prayer. Wouldn't that be cool? Here's the thing. I don't think that will happen. But you know what? The Israelites didn't think the sea was going to split either, right? The reality is we serve a God who does big, big God-sized things. I want you to be praying for the ministry here. I want you to be praying for the finances here. I want you to wake up every day and I want you to pray for how you can be a part of what Aviator is trying to accomplish, because what we are trying to accomplish is what God has called us to, which is love God, love others. I love you guys. I know that we have a bunch of people who are out sick, so if you see them around town this week, just remind them to, tithe regularly, and they're like, what? Be like, I don't know, to see you. And then that'll be a weird experience that you guys will have had together. I want to encourage you guys to take this to heart. I want to encourage you to be, encouraging one another to do the same. The only way that we come through this thing is, number one, if God is doing something powerful, and number two is if we're all pulling in the same direction. I want to see an Aviator that not only reaches that community, but then the next neighborhood over for the next 500 houses, and then the next one for the next 500 houses. Not so that we can be some big church and say, look what we did, but so that we can make much of the name of God throughout our community, so that a revival can start and people can be saved. So you might have noticed, you guys ready for this? We didn't take the offering at the beginning of the service. Wanted to give you an opportunity to hear what we're talking about. And here's the thing. You might be like, Dave, you're just trying to guilt us into giving. Yeah, I guess a little bit. I don't know. I'm not really. But I wanted to make sure that you understand what the giving time is. I asked Matt to come up and lead in worship as we give. People are going to be coming forward. And here's the thing. If today you're not equipped to do this, or if you don't feel like you have the wiggle room to do it, we've always said this. If it comes down to feeding your family or donating to the church, feed your family. But as God has blessed you, and as God has given you the ability to be generous, and as God has called you to reflect his generosity, we ask that at this time you give not begrudgingly and not out of obligation, but we do ask that you give cheerfully, and we ask that you give consistently, because that's what God's word calls us to do. So I'm going to pray over our time of giving, and then I'll pass it off to Matt and to the team. Thank you guys so much for not biting my head off for this. If you have questions, I'll be in the lobby. I'd love to talk to you after the service. Father God, I praise you for the crazy stuff you did before COVID. And for the fact that you orchestrated things when we couldn't understand what you were doing. That, God, you saw the storm on the horizon that we had no idea was coming for us. And that, God, because of you and because of you alone and your faithfulness, that, God, as we embarked on a journey to follow you and to serve you, you guarded your church. In the same way you guarded the Israelites from the army, in the same way you guarded the Israelites from the sea, God, you guarded us against a storm that we didn't see. God, we're trying to be proactive. We want to honor you with our stewardship of what you've entrusted us. God, I pray that if there are major decisions that need to be made in the life of the church, that, God, you would give us wisdom, you would give us clarity, and that, God, no matter what decisions need to be made, that people would look at what you're doing at Aviator Church and see that it's not about what a bunch of people are doing, but that the only reasonable explanation for how any of this works is that God did something huge. God, let them be like the Israelites who didn't believe as they watched Moses throw his arms out over the sea. Show them who you are, God. Not who Aviator is, not who we are. Show them who you are by using a church who's willing to follow and obey. God, bless this time of giving, that it would be honoring to you. We love you. It's your name we pray. Amen.